welcome back to the coach. And we are on part two today of this dreaded opponent called finances. And Cameron Miller is with me again today. We're going to break down this next level. We're going to take it next level than we did the first part. So if you missed the first part, be sure to go back and watch that, and it'll gear you up for what we're going to talk about today. So, Cameron, thanks again for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
I
I
can't wait
love it.
to dive into this part because sometimes people think, and maybe more so from a ministry standpoint, but that is God okay with me saving money and like investing and those sort of things? And it's actually biblical. Proverbs 21:20 says, "There is precious treasure and oil in the dwelling of the wise, but a foolish man swallows it up." Saving money and knowing how to handle your money is wisdom,
Absolutely.
so we're not foolishly squandering it away. The prodigal son, when he gets all his inheritance and he goes and foolishly squanders it away till he has nothing. And so that is the reason that what we're going to talk about today is so important. So, what kind of advice would you give to somebody first looking into, all right, now I might, no matter if I have a little bit of money or I have a lot of money, now what?
Mhm. And kinda like what we were talking about in the last episode, I think that, especially I love that word wisdom, because we said that knowledge, financial literacy, knowledge is power and it's valuable, and I think that the knowledge is more valuable than the money is, but what is neat is kinda what we're gonna be talking about in this, I guess, segment, episode, whatever it's called, is the application of knowledge is really what turns into wisdom, that kind of wise experience. So, us looking at maybe building up some of that wisdom and some of that financial literacy, what do we do now when it comes to our money? Assuming that we're making enough money that we can start to venture ahead, plan ahead, which ultimately it doesn't take as much as people often think that it does to be able to start dealing wisely with it. The very first thing to do, and you may already have this done, this is for somebody that maybe is really struggling with financial money management, financial literacy, all that stuff, is save $1,000 would be the first. If I'm talking to somebody that I don't know their situation, don't know where they're at, there's probably people listening that have, tens of thousands of dollars saved and are way past that. There's other people that are like, listen to this in the car and they're checking their bank statement to see if they have enough money to go get a McDonald's drink, which we'll
Yes.
talk about that in a second. But anyway, like there's people in so many different ranges. There's people that are deep in debt, people that don't have any debt, like without knowing a situation, it's really hard to speak to and give a one size fits all. You ask, is $1,000 enough? Of course not. Of course, it's not enough because the moment that we save 1,000, there's going to be something come up that costs 1,500 or that costs 2,000 or whatever it is. But the concept, the reason for the concept behind it is one, it puts us in a position to begin to understand our finances and know exactly how much we have to be able to save that much. If we're really serious about it, if somebody's like hungry, I want to be on top of my money, I want to be in control of my money, I don't want my money to feel like it's controlling me anymore. There are no rules out there to stop you from selling stuff. It doesn't have to take 2 years to get $1,000 saved. It
Mhm.
doesn't it doesn't have to take 2 weeks if you're serious enough about it. But the reason for it is not about the $1,000. Like, yes, that's a helpful emergency fund for when the tire blows and you have to get a new tire put on your car, or the washing machine goes out and you have to buy a new washing machine. Like, yes, it's for that, but it's bigger than that. It's a mental process, and maybe even for some people it's a spiritual process of coming to learn. The first part of financial literacy is knowing, where is all of my money going?
Yes.
And by getting into this goal of 1,000 or however much you want to make it, saving X amount, it puts us in a position to, I'm going to figure out every dollar that's going out, every dollar that's coming in, and figure out how long it would take me to save that amount. And for someone that wants to get back in control of their finances, maybe taking control is selling some stuff that at one point in time you thought you needed, but you realize you don't actually need. Canceling some of those expenditures and trimming some of that fat that we call it a need, but it's really not a need. Um, and that would be kind of a very bare bones first step, not knowing where somebody's at and knowing their specific situation is set a small goal like that, and no matter where you're at, I think we need to get a new mindset. Rich and poor is as much of a mindset as it is anything else. Of $1,000 is not a lot of money, and I know that $1,000 is a lot of money. But if we're going to start to kind of have this in control mindset of seeing that as not a mountain that I can't climb, but this is something I can do and can attain, and that will be a great first step to give us the awareness I think that we need.
And as you're saying that, you sometimes there are services that you are paying for monthly that are we think they're needs, but they're not needs. Let's say cable or,
Yeah.
streaming services or whatever. A lot of times they will let you put a hold on your service for say 3 months,
Mhm.
and you can pick it right back up. But what you were paying them to hold that
Mhm.
service is paused for those 3 months. Well, you could take what you've been used to paying and put that in that savings, to help build that up. And
Absolutely.
there's several subscriptions that will do that. I firmly agree with you in that. I remember, I'm gonna make this a real life example. So I'm in this series. I'm just airing all all my stuff, but um, I can remember. Gosh, I'm gonna tell my age here. 1995, when I moved out of my mom and dad's home, and I had $1,000 in a savings account that they had saved for me through the years.
Mhm.
Of course, back then $1,000 was a lot more than it is now. And I eventually got that up to 2,000, and it stayed 2,000 my entire life, or I'd say last 25 years or so, it was there. And but I quickly learned that when the tire went out and you had to replace the tire, like how's that going to get built back up if you were like living paycheck to
Mhm.
paycheck kind of thing, even though it feels like you can't spare it. I started having directly taken out of my paycheck, every paycheck. I started out with $12.50 every 2 weeks, literally,
Mhm.
because I'll get paid every 2 weeks. $12.50 going into that account. And it would replenish whatever I had used. So eventually that got up to $25 a paycheck. It was $50 a month going in
Yeah.
there. And you can continue to increase that as time goes on. But there also needs to be a means of replacing that once you have to tap into that emergency fund.
Mhm.
So everything that would get over the $2,000, like if let's say it got up to 23 or $2,400 or whatever, I would take the 3 or 400 and pay it on a debt, you
Yeah.
know. But there was like you said, everybody's different. It's not a one size fits all. But for me, it was the 2000, and to continue to have an action plan already in place that's replenishing as it's needed to be used.
Absolutely. And that's what I think a lot of people sometimes miss, especially if there's somebody that's listening to this that's feels like they're struggling with
Mhm.
money management. They feel like they're really behind. They feel like they're in a lot of debt. Maybe they are. Maybe you are in a lot of debt. One of the first big things is having awareness and knowledge of where that money is going, and then, like you said, starting to make some adjustments and really trimming the fat on what our needs are and what our wants are. And even especially like you said, there's some changes that will be temporary,
Mhm.
that this is not a forever kind of thing. And there's some changes that you'll make that change and realize, oh man, I really didn't need that. Like I'm just as happy using this money towards my future, towards dreams and goals, towards paying off debt, towards investing. And I would much rather have it go toward this than have it go toward, my Hulu subscription
Yeah.
or whatever
Yeah.
else it is. And so there's a lot of things where you will have to, if you're serious about this and maybe wanting to get on top of this, wanting to get out of debt, wanting to actually have a future where you're investing in something where you're not just living paycheck to paycheck, like we're gonna have to make changes where it's going to hurt. Like,
Mhm.
gonna have to make changes where it's not gonna be enjoyable. So many people with a cell phone plan, with a cell phone bill that's $250 a month because they walk into, whoever your carrier is, and they look at all these plans and options, and so they're like, "Man, you can get the brand new iPhone, and it's only $25 a month." Here's part of the problem with money theory. We're living in a world that is no longer thinking about what something costs. We're living in a world that is only thinking about what the monthly payment is.
Yes.
And so we're restructuring. People are wrongly, I say we, not including myself, but people that are struggling with this have restructured their mindset to only think about what the monthly cost is. And so they say, I make this much a month. I'm just going to get enough payments to total this much a month. And they're killing themselves financially. I was sitting in a car dealership with somebody that was purchasing a vehicle. Um, that had the salesman there in front of him. That the salesman, he was interested, he inquired about a vehicle. The salesman came back with a piece of paper with like six different prices of six different monthly payment plans and what they were. And he said, "All right, here's what we're looking at the breakdown of this one and this one." And the guy that I was sitting with said, "Let me stop you. Like, how much does it cost?" And he said, "Well, I'm showing you this one costs this much, but this one, this much, but this much." He said, "That's not, it's not what I asked. I didn't ask what your monthly payments were. How much does it cost?" And he had to go back and get another sheet of paper that had the total cost on it because nobody asks that question anymore.
No.
Nobody cares what it costs. They say, I want this vehicle, or I want this cell phone payment plan with the monthly, and I just want to make sure it can fit what I can pay monthly. Here's the second thing that we can learn from that interaction that I had in that car dealership. Whenever he came back with the price that had all the fees and everything else tacked on. He talked to him and said, "We're not doing that." And the guy said, "Oh, you can't afford, you can't pay this amount." That's the next thing that we got to learn about budgeting. Is the young man that was sitting there trying to sell that car immediately went to people that are trying to sell stuff, people that maybe are, and it could even be our family looking at us making some of these changes in our lives, that are not as supportive as we would like for them to be because they're not in control of their finances either. And they love you, but they don't necessarily want to see you get out of the hole that they haven't been able to get out of in 60
Oh, yeah.
years, because it makes them feel guilty.
Well,
And
there's
so,
nothing they have to bring to this situation. It
yeah,
goes back to that being teachable that we talked about.
absolutely.
If mom and dad, grandma and grandpa wasn't teachable, how can they pass on to you what they don't know?
Hmm.
And we'll cap our growth. What if we stop being teachable? We've capped our growth.
Hmm.
We'll only be as good or only have like the life when you're talking about finances, you're only going to grow in your finances, you're only going to grow in your marriage, you're only going to grow in your relationship with Christ, you're only going to grow as much as you're teachable. And once you decide I'm not teachable anymore, I know enough, or I think I know it all, then you have not only squashed your ability to grow, but you have everybody else that's supposed to grow underneath you. And that
Hmm.
includes your children, your
Yeah.
grandchildren, everybody under your care in your place of employment or your business. You have just stunted your growth and theirs.
Absolutely. And whenever we start kind of breaking some of those generational curses, there's going to be different. It's a whole new world for one, and two, we may get some pushback along the way. And one of the ways that people will do it whenever you're choosing to make changes and live differently, is this salesman again. He's just trying to make a sale. Looked across the table and told this guy, "Oh, so you can't afford it." And it was a mind game. It was a sales tactic. It was very, very strategic. What's ironic about the situation, me being an outsider watching this happen, this was a young 20-something-year-old kid, living in Nashville, paycheck to paycheck, talking to a guy that's probably worth between 3.5 and $4 million. So no, it's not that he couldn't afford it. It was that he wasn't going to pay that. And so we start to get out of this, what does it cost monthly? What does it cost in total? we start getting to a place where we start thinking about not putting it on a payment, but buying things in full, even that if that means I'm buying something that is not as nice as the thing that I can put on a payment.
You
It starts to reshape our world.
you know, I laugh at that because the pendulum has switched so much from I can remember as a child growing up, my dad would refuse to buy a vehicle on credit.
Yeah.
He would drive the thing, literally the truck that got handed down to me when I was 16 was a 1977 Datsun that was brown with white wheels. It was so rusted underneath. Like I thought I'm gonna have to drive this like Fred Flintstone because
Yeah,
you could pull up the mat and look straight down
there
the
it was.
road. And it was like so they had to put metal in it. He did paint it for me. It had no power steering. It was a straight shift. I remember I broke my wrist playing basketball, and I boy turning that power steering and shifting. It was hard, but great. It was so character building, you know. But he would not. He would drive the thing till the wheels fell off of it, and he
Yeah.
would not buy a vehicle. He would not buy anything that he had to finance. Like
Mhm.
he was going to pay cash for it, or you weren't getting it. And he would live frugally enough. We lived frugally enough. We didn't suffer or do without for this reason, but I mean, he would tell us no. We didn't get everything we wanted,
Mhm.
because he was saving and to pay cash for when, okay, this one's not going to go any further. We've got to have another vehicle.
Yeah.
And then he would buy it. And I can remember him negotiate. He was like a salesman's worst nightmare.
Yeah.
I can remember him negotiating, I want your cash price. I'm not
Mhm.
trading in. I want your cash price. And I remember back then, a cash buyer meant something. A
Right.
cash buyer, they were like salivating at the mouth, like, yes, we
Right.
want this cash buyer. And you
Yeah.
had such negotiating power with that. If you can't
Yeah.
finance it, they're not even really that interested in doing business with you. It seems like.
One of the factors with it is, technology makes it so much easier to run credit. Like, it's
Mhm.
not a hassle to run credit. Every major car dealership has someone that their entire job is salesmen don't even run credit anymore like they had to back then, and back then, they're filling out paper and making phone calls and all that other mess. So, it's gotten so easy that they definitely want you to finance it. Well, again, if we're gonna get back on top, if you are not in control of your money, if your money's in control of you, it's going to require doing things so differently from everybody at your work, everybody in your family, everybody else around you. Even if it is just temporary to get out of the hole, or even if it is a brand new lifestyle to try to get ahead. And when I say get ahead, I mean get your money put in places where it is kind of that Proverbs 21:20 where it's not being devoured, it's being stored up. Because I don't think if our goal is noble, if it's not just I want to be wealthy because I want everybody to see how good I am, if our goal is I want to be able to retire by the time that I'm 55 so I can enjoy my family and my grandkids and have the money to do that and have the free time to be able to be involved in my relationship with God, my church, in community programs. Like, that is a noble goal to have, to be able to keep in the back of our mind whenever we are making these big changes that hurt, it's not for nothing.
Yeah.
Because some people, they only save because they've been told you're supposed to save and they can't figure out why they can't keep saving. It's because
Yeah.
you don't have a tangible goal for why you're saving. You don't have a why.
Yes, you
And
need to
so
identify your why. What's your why?
once we set out a why of what I'm working toward, it gets a whole lot easier to live different. And so that living different may be not having a car payment. It may be driving a piece of junk that you paid cash for, which is what I'm currently doing. It may be not having the cell phone payment because no, you don't need a brand new iPhone. You could have a cell phone that you bought on Facebook Marketplace for $50 and you met some I bought this secondhand from a teenage girl that you know what I'm saying? Like, I recognize I have kids at church that make fun of me because they have a nicer phone than I do. And it's fun. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's fine. It doesn't bother me in the least. But I realize that that's different than the norm. But that $50 phone makes the same phone calls. It doesn't charge me every month.
I wanna personalize this a little bit.
Yeah.
Why do you believe that people have such a hard time in this generation, in this day and time? Because it used to be a lot easier for older generations.
Mhm.
Why is it so hard for generations this day and time to trim that fat or to choose willingly to do without what they could do, what they could have?
Um, yeah, couple different things. This is just my opinion. Um, Generational shift. So the we were talking in the last episode about the boomer generation. They were the children of the greatest generation. The greatest generation will be the generation that lived through the depression.
Yes.
So the baby boomer generation was raised by the generation that lived through the depression.
Save everything.
Yeah, I distinct, and she's still alive. I watched my grandmother wash tinfoil
Mhm.
and straighten it back out. And like it wasn't a second thought. Like it's simply what you did. And so they created a generation of prosperity. Like the as much as you want to hate on them, the baby boomer generation created the largest jump and the largest shift in American prosperity in American history. And so part of that is our the younger I'm still part of that younger generation. Our parents were not raised in any kind of poverty or struggle, and the people that raised them were not raised in any poverty or struggle.
Mhm.
And so now that we're finally 4 generations removed, I think one thing just that we don't even realize has happened, is we've been conditioned into build a good life, and that good life is marked by vehicles and homes and vacations. It's not marked by peace of mind. You know what I
Mhm.
mean?
Mhm.
So there's one huge thing that I think we haven't even acknowledged that it's happening. That's happening is we've never seen poverty and struggle the way that that generation did. 82 was bad.
Mhm.
'08 was bad,
Yes.
but neither of them touch the defining depression that
No,
you know what I mean?
not even close.
So that's one part of it. Two is like we talked about in that first episode, an entire generation of parents told their children, go to school for 4 years and get that degree, and you'll never have to worry ever again. And so an entire generation of people went to school and got that degree and figured out on the other side that they were it wasn't that they were intentionally misled, but they were misled.
And, you know, we live in such an on-demand society.
Mhm.
There is a generation that has been raised to why wait? Why
Yeah.
wait if you can have it now? They're, growing up, can you imagine teenagers today if they had to dial on a rotary dial phone?
Yeah.
Like how long it would take to dial the number itself and they would have to wait.
Yeah.
The waiting, there is no waiting in anything anymore.
No.
I can remember my dad was so wise in these aspects. I can remember as a teenager, it has nothing to do with money, but I remember it became important to me when I didn't have money.
Mhm.
I may have been 12 or 13 years old, and my dad was strict. You didn't question him, you didn't talk back, you didn't, whatever. What he said was golden, and that's the way it was going to be. And I can remember wanting to go spend a night with a friend one night, and he said no. And
Mhm.
I thought, why? Like, we're not going anywhere. There's no plans. So
Mhm.
here I go, putting my big girl pants on. And I asked him why, and he said, because you're going to learn the value of the word no. In this life, you're not going to get everything you want,
Yeah.
and it's my job to teach you how to handle that. So I'm
Yeah.
going to tell you no for no other good reason than just no, because you're going to know what it's like not to get everything you want.
Because you're not always gonna get a reason for your no in life. That's fantastic.
Well, I can
Yeah.
remember fast forward, I was probably 28, 29 years old when as I was talking about before, rationing food,
Yeah.
cutting on the grocery list. Like I got 60 bucks, five of it's going to taxes. I can spend $55 at the grocery store this week. And my son being 3 years old, and we're going down the toy aisle. He wanted to know if we go
Mhm.
down the toy aisle after we got all the groceries. And I was like, oh, great, because he's going to want something and I can't afford it. It's not in the budget. I can't afford it. Telling your kids no is
Mhm.
another problem that tanks budgets hugely.
Yeah.
So we're going down this aisle and he's riding up in the front of the cart and he's looking over, at the little, he loved Thomas the Train at that point. It's Thomas the Trains and all these other things. And I could just see his little eyes and him just wanting one of those toys. And I wanted so bad to get it for him. And I look at him and I said, Mama, sorry, she can't buy you that. And he said, It's okay, Mama. You'll have no monies. You want to talk about heart wrenching? I wanted to like,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'll just buy them all for you. Forget the budget. You know,
Yeah.
I had to, then my daddy's words came back to me. This is when you have to tell yourself no and you got to tell him no. Because
Mhm.
it's either that or put a roof over his head, pay the water bill.
Absolutely.
And it's those kind of little lessons. We don't know the value of the word no in an on demand society.
Mhm.
We have no self control anymore, which is a fruit of the Holy Spirit that we need. And,
Yeah.
we hugely lack self control. Not everybody, but a lot of people lack self control when it comes to having money in your hand.
Yeah. And a lot what's so good about, like, you being willing to be open and tell those stories is that whenever you then later communicate that to your son when he's 14, 15, 16 years old, and y'all are living and kind of experiencing the fruits of your labor,
Mhm.
and he sees how good life is and he hears that story, he then comes to learn that, "Oh, it hasn't always been like this."
Yes.
But you've got kids that honestly don't have a good, strong core memory till age 10 or 12. They're living kind of the fruits of their parents' struggle, and they never have those real conversations. They get out and get on their own and assume, well, I'm just going to get a job and I'm going to have exactly what all my parents had immediately,
Yeah. Yeah.
instantly. And the difference is we have a world that's willing to sell it to them at an 8% interest rate.
Oh, and
And
yes.
they never struggle. They think that they have what their parents have, but they don't. The
Yeah.
creditor does, the lender does, the
Yes.
bank does. You don't own anything. You don't
Yes.
have anything. And you're gonna not have anything for your entire life if you keep maxing out your budget based on what can I afford in a monthly payment. And you'll go through the end of this life never owning anything that way.
Yes.
And so I think it's a matter when we start looking at these budgets, it's not what can I fit and what can I make work monthly? It's like we talked about in the last episode, what am I going to give to my God in
Yes.
whatever capacity?
Yes.
Secondly, what is it going to take for me to achieve my personal financial goals for this life?
Yes.
When that comes to retirement, when that comes to and here's another one, is getting to a spot where you own your own home. People do not realize the value of that. I've rented before. There's nothing wrong with renting, but like come the time that you're 65 and still renting and want to retire, you're not going to be able
You're
to
stuck.
at that point it'll be $2,500 a month, and people don't realize the tools that are there and available for them. Like the government has set aside those loans for first time home buyers to be able to afford a home.
And most of the time, the sellers will pay your closing costs. So,
Yes,
and that's the thing a
absolutely,
lot
they
of people
will.
don't realize is that sellers will they will cover your closing costs. There's a lot of people who do not even realize the options they have available. They
Mhm.
automatically assume that it's not an option for them. Maybe they never saw that it was an option for their parents or their grandparents, and they assume it's not an option for them.
Yeah.
They don't even know. Like I can remember working with a girl that had like 4 or 5 years in recovery,
Mhm.
and she was still financing a car through a high interest rate finance company,
Mhm.
and she needed another vehicle. And I can remember her coming to me. I mean, and she's about my age, and I was like, don't go through the finance company. You'll get a better interest rate at the bank.
Mhm.
And she was like, but would a bank loan me money? And I was like, well, yes. I mean, if your credit's there, whatever.
Yeah.
She's like, really, I cannot tell you what that did for her as a human being, like
Mhm.
with dignity, to be able to go in to a bank and they gave her a loan for her car. I can't express that. Like they just think they're not good enough. They
Mhm.
automatically think they're not good enough sometimes to be able to afford these kind of benefits or programs, and they just don't know what is available to them.
Absolutely. And another thing is if you do have a checkered past or bad credit or whatever else, like keep in mind yet that the bank is concerned with who they're loaning money to. Yes, that's
Mhm.
where your credit score
Mhm.
comes in, but they're also concerned about the value of the thing that they're loaning money for.
Yes.
And so if you come across a fantastic deal on a vehicle or a house or whatever else, that factors in.
Mhm.
It may not factor in as much as your credit score does, but that is a factor of they go out and send out an appraiser for a house that you've got it at 140, they're appraising it at, 180. Well, good grief. Like that's no that's low risk to them because the out the door check of what they're loaning you that money for, they can get at auction.
Yeah,
Like there's more factors than what we
a
sometimes
lot.
think are there. You look at high versus lower interest rates, that's another part of looking at trimming the fat and making a budget is
Yes.
what are the things that I need to get out of that are high interest kind of loans. Um, and this again, it's its own separate podcast. Um, if you're really, really deep in credit card debt and can't bring yourself to stop spending the credit card, like there's something to take care of before we get into any of this trimming the fat stuff
Mhm.
and that's controlling myself and getting out of this credit card debt before I start doing anything
Cut the
else.
card up.
Right.
Mhm.
And some people like have got to cut the card up in order to get back in control.
Mhm.
The flip side to that, maybe there's somebody listening that is not bad with credit card debt and has just always been told never use a credit card by somebody that cares about them and doesn't want them into credit card debt. But if you have control of yourself, you can do so much good for yourself in the terms of credit by wisely using a credit card.
Mhm. Mhm.
I have for years now, probably almost 10 years now, everything I buy goes onto a credit card and every month it gets paid in full. Here's the reason why I do that, and this story is funny. So back in college is when I first took it out. I was kind of first listening to some of these financial people and investors, wealthy people that I thought it would be good in my life to have the kind of wealth that they do. And they were talking about this stuff and they were talking about credit cards. And they were like, the reason why it's beneficial to take out a credit card is the one thing that anybody can get when it comes to your credit level, whether you have no credit history, bad credit history, whatever else. And again, assuming that you have that kind of control to be able to only take out what you can pay back, very biblical principle every month that builds towards your trustworthiness and your credit.
I would see people struggling. I would see people overdrafting their checking accounts. I would see people repeating this cycle over and over and over that would not sit down with you and create a budget and learn where the money's
Mhm.
going and learn how to cash flow, learn their behaviors. Like, I think I agree with you. Like some people have to handle credit cards differently. Like some people
Mhm.
can do like what you do, some people can't.
Right.
They'll run the budget, the amount up, and they'll pay the minimum payment. And once that worked one time, then they're trapped and they're stuck. And you have to know your personal behaviors. You have
Mhm.
to know what is your nature to do,
Mhm.
and then is this safe considering my spending habits or considering my nature? But they will not sit down and look at it with you, and they will stay in bondage, not choosing not to know because
Yeah.
they're too afraid of what they might find out.
Absolutely.
And one of the things that in the program that I work with people, but I have them pull 2 months worth of bank statements,
Mhm.
um, and average everything in three categories: food, grocery, or well, let me say this: gas, groceries, and what I call weekly spending money.
Mhm.
That's the went through the drive through, I got the car washed, I bought somebody a gift, all of the unexpecteds. I bought this shirt at the store. I ordered on Amazon, things that didn't fit in any other budgeted category. At Make buckets, 3 buckets, and categorize all of those expenses in one of those 3 buckets: gas, groceries, and spending money,
Mhm.
and average them out for a month. And then do it again the next month, because sometimes you have unexpected things one month that you didn't have the other month, but 2 months gives you an average of a
Yeah.
good idea. When they do that, oh my, they
Eyes
realize,
open.
oh my, oh my,
Yeah.
and they're like, "Oh,
Mhm.
this is why I have no money. Oh, groceries cost me a lot more than I thought. Oh, I'm
Mhm.
spending way more on gas than I thought I was." And then you start finding, if you do that exercise alone, you really start finding where your habits are, what your nature
Mhm.
is, and where the biggest portion of trimming can come from.
Absolutely. And, I think that whenever we do start, it's difficult to start trimming,
Mhm,
but part of what I think you'll find if you're going through this is it's not just even a little small short-term thing. It's about kind of becoming the kind of person that can live not in our means, but beneath our means,
mhm.
to use excess money to work for you and work for us to build in the kind of way that we are you're living like nobody else right now, so that one day you can live like nobody else. And that's ultimately it's going to hurt, it's going to cost something. And something that I've had to start doing is I got real good, and I say that sarcastically, at early on in marriage, saying we don't have money for that. Um, when in all reality, we did. We were just using it somewhere else in our own, communicating it with spouse, communicating it with kids or whatever. Like we could, you know what I mean? Communicate to your kids. We could go out and buy and take out the same car payment as the Joneses with the Suburban or Escalade or whatever. Like we could have the same payment that they have in the same vehicle that we have, but it's not that we don't have the money, we don't have the money for that. And so it doesn't just teach we're in poverty and couldn't physically do it if we wanted to. It begins to teach we're choosing differently with our
We
money.
would
We're living differently.
we prefer to be free,
Yeah, we would prefer to exactly. We would prefer to be
because I'm gonna
free.
tell you right
Yeah.
now, that debt, and I know everybody's stance on it is different. And here I
Mhm.
was a loan officer for all these years making loans for people, but I cannot tell you how many times the loans I was making was to try to help them get out of debt, restructure,
Mhm.
restructure, restructure, restructure to get out of debt. My
Yeah.
number one passion for everybody was to live financially free,
Yeah.
like to be free. And
Mhm.
to be in debt is bondage. Now, is all debt equal? There are some debts that are considered investments.
Yeah,
You are making
absolutely.
investments. There is some debt that is bondage, because there
Mhm.
is no return on that investment. There's
Right.
no return on that debt. It's just straight up, I want it. I'm gonna go get it. It's a depreciating asset. It's
Exactly.
losing money. The day I drive it off the lot, it's losing money, and I'm not gonna get anything back out of it. That's bondage.
Yeah.
And there's a difference.
Absolutely, there
So,
is. And so when we talk about, the beginning of budgeting, trimming the fat, once we identify what all these payments are, stop, start getting rid of them. Like 90% of the stuff in our house right now came off Facebook Marketplace.
yes.
Like
Yes.
I can clean a couch, I can clean a chair or the kitchen table or whatever else, and it will be perfectly fine.
Mhm.
People that are putting things that are unnecessary, that are depreciating in value. That means they're losing their value over time. And start to, if we're gonna take out debt towards something that is appreciating, which, for
Mhm.
example,
The home.
that would be your home that grows in value as you're paying it down. And yes, that is going to become difficult because, and that's what just people don't understand. Like I remember being a kid in the school pickup line, and I can remember it was in elementary school. I can remember the girl's name whose dad it was that was driving a little do you remember those little Geo cars? Not a
Yes.
Geo Tracker, but a tiny Geo
Yes. Geo
car.
Metro.
The ugliest looking little vehicles that there ever were, and some of the first vehicles that came out that were advertising 45 miles a gallon. And I remember looking at him and thinking to myself, I remember thinking to myself as genuinely as I could, like not arrogantly, not looking it down, like in concern. I remember thinking, oh, I didn't know that she was poor. And there's so many grown adults that are still in the third grade mentality that I have of not knowing any better,
Yes.
that that vehicle was paid for and that vehicle was actually in gas savings paying for itself
Yes.
whenever I was sitting in a car on loan.
Yes.
You know what I
Yes.
mean?
100%.
And so I just didn't realize we've got to maybe get out of some of these mindsets of what rich is and what poor is and start restructuring where we can actually give to our God first, put back for our future second, and deal with all of the fallout from
Yes.
from there on.
I want to throw
And
some
yeah,
scripture to
please
that
do.
because Proverbs 22:7 speaks to that and says, "The rich rules over the poor, and the borrower becomes the lender's slave."
Mm,
And what you're describing is exactly that. Like, I don't know about you, but I don't want to be a slave to nothing but
no,
Jesus.
absolutely.
Nothing.
Yeah.
Like, I'm ready to just like annihilate it. Ecclesiastes 11, chapter 11, verse 2 through 6.
Written by the richest man to ever live,
There we go.
Solomon himself,
If
wisest man to ever
if
live,
anybody knew,
per capita,
he knew.
richest man to ever live.
He knew. He knew. He knew. So I'm gonna read that when I get over here to it. So Ecclesiastes 11 2 through 6 says, "Divide your portion to 7 or even to 8. For you do not know what misfortune may occur on the earth. If the clouds are full, they pour out rain upon the earth. And whether a tree falls toward the south or toward the north, wherever the tree falls, there it lies. He who watches the wind will not sow, and he who looks at the clouds will not reap. Just as you do not know the path of the wind and how bones are formed in the womb of a pregnant woman, so you do not know the activity of God who makes all things. Sow your seed in the morning and do not be idle in the evening, for you do not know whether morning or evening sowing will succeed,
Mm,
or whether both of them alike will be good." Basically, he is saying diversify,
yeah.
diversify, diversify, diversify.
But keep in mind from the very beginning, like you've got to have a reason why you're putting that back and a vision that you're passionate about of what this money is for.
Yes,
What do I see my future looking like?
yes,
Living in a home that I'm not stressed about making the payment each month for, a home that I have paid for that's not subject to my landlord deciding at the end of this lease I'm going to raise rent $500 and
mhm.
you can either pay it or get out. Like having a vision of what that piece looks like, what that home looks like, what that entire experience is, and then knowing here's what I'm investing in. Here's what I'm putting back for. It's not just saving money to save money.
When you're doing your budget and you're trying to figure out how much extra do I have that I can invest.
Mhm.
Um, One of the things that I think is very important from a biblical standpoint, Matthew chapter 6, verses 19 and 20 say this. And the only reason I'm alluding to this is because, that was kind of me in my life, the testimony I shared in part one.
Mhm.
Um, I got so consumed by the investing and the nest egging and all of that stuff that it became my security more than God became my
Yeah,
security. And I lost sight of that. So we have to watch that balance and keep that in check. Um,
absolutely.
Chapter 6, verse 19 and 20 says, "Do not lay up for yourselves treasures upon earth where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal, but lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven where neither moth nor rust destroys and where thieves do not break in and steal." that verse, I do not believe, is saying don't own a home, don't own anything at all.
Mhm.
Um, Quite the contrary. It goes back to that example that you gave in part one. Send me $1,000 and you'll get $35,000. Well,
Yeah.
no, maybe sometimes that $1,000 that you took off the top of your budget produced 35,000 souls changed, for the
Yeah.
kingdom of God. Doesn't always necessarily mean dollar for dollar, right? So
Mhm.
the investing part is important. But I'm going to tell you how important, because Jesus goes on to say, he gives them a parable about investing. And it's in Matthew 25, verse 14 is where it begins. The parable of the talents. And it says, for it is just like a man about to go on a journey who called his own slaves and entrusted his possessions to them. And to one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, and to another 1, each according to his own ability. And he went on his journey. Now, talents were their form of money back then. Immediately, the one who had received the 5 talents went and traded with them and gained 5 more talents. In the same manner, the one who had received the 2 talents gained 2 more. But he who received the 1 talent went away and dug in the ground and hid his master's money. Now, after a long time, the master of those slaves came and settled accounts with them. And the one who had received the 5 talents came up and brought 5 more talents, saying, Master, you entrusted 5 talents to me. See, I have gained 5 more talents. He invested.
Mhm.
His master said to him, Well done, good and faithful slave. You were faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Enter into the joy of your master. The one also who had received the 2 talents came up and said, Master, you entrusted to me 2 talents. See, I have gained 2 more talents. His master said to him, Well done, good and faithful slave. You were faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Enter into the joy of your master. And the one who also had received the 1 talent came up and said, Master, I knew you to be a hard man, reaping where you did not sow, and gathering where you scattered no seed. And I was afraid and went away and hid your talent in the ground. See, you have what is yours. But his master answered and said to him, You wicked, lazy slave. You knew that I reaped where I did not sow, and gathered where I scattered no seed. Then you ought to have put my money in the bank, and on my arrival, I would have received my money back with interest. He was saying, if you had not put it to work and used it to create more wealth, then you could have at least put it in the bank and it would have at least drawn interest.
Mhm.
Therefore,
Yeah.
take away the talent from him and give it to the one who has the 10 talents. For to everyone who has shall more be given, and he shall have an abundance. But from the one who does not have, even what he does have shall be taken away. And cast out the worthless slave into outer darkness. In that place there shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Well, this speaks volumes. Obviously, the slaves had different means of multiplying that income.
Mhm.
Now, let's put that in modern day terms. Sometimes that might look like hard work.
Mhm.
Sometimes, he took that 5, he might have bought some tools that he
Yeah.
needed or invested in a trade. Like you said, it doesn't take a
Right.
4-year degree. He could have taken a few months, a little bit of money, and then turn around and created a trade with that.
Mhm.
And now he's able to produce wealth, doubling it. Sometimes it might look like investing it into a stock market, like
Mhm.
you're talking about. And then that investing is returning, it's got a greater return
Yeah.
so that he can bring back. But why is that important? Why does Jesus say that is important?
Mhm.
Because it's not, he wants us to give good gifts to our children. There's scripture about that. We're supposed to be able to pass down wealth generation to generation. We're supposed to be wise with it. But that's not the only thing. He wants us to use that money to also further invest, because what were they having to do? Giving it back to the master. It was the
Mhm.
master's money.
Yeah.
He gave it to them. And when he returned, what have you done with it to make me more money?
Mhm.
Okay. So let's look at that in terms of souls.
Absolutely.
Okay. So somebody who got like the 1 talent, digs it in the ground, living in fear of God. If I mess up, if I mess up, if I lose this, then he's going to be upset. So I'm just going to hide it and I'm not going to do anything with it. Then he comes back and he says, "What have you done?
Yeah.
What have you done? Like I gave you the one. What have you produced?
Mm.
You know, because you hid and you lived in fear.
Yeah.
What are you in fear of that prevents you from gaining the knowledge you need to be an investor?
Mm.
What are you living in fear of? Or pride?
Yeah.
Pride is fear disguised. What pride is holding you back from going and saying, you know what? I don't know how to budget. I don't know how to manage money.
Yeah.
I don't know how to keep from overdrawing my account, but you do, or somebody around you does. Go seek advice. Go seek counsel from those people and learn. Learn what to do with it. That's what he expects us to do. But if we're hiding it,
Mm.
we're not producing wealth for our children, nor are we producing kingdom results. And for what? What
Yeah.
are you afraid of?
And one of the biggest things is people, in order to change their budget, they have to change their lifestyle.
Yes.
And in order to change their lifestyle, it means that the people at the ball field think that I've gone broke. Or, the people in my friend group or my family think I'm not doing as well as I was doing because I no longer have the iPhone 16 and I no longer have, a brand new vehicle, neither of which, to be fair, neither of which you actually had before, but you were on loan, they were possessing them, but
Yeah.
they were somebody else's.
Yeah.
So I think that's one of the biggest fears to making big changes is we don't like the thought of people thinking differently of us or
And
thinking
we,
less of us because
mhm.
those are the life changes that it's actually going to take to get to a spot where we have the capital to invest in in a future.
And we also just
And
don't want to be inconvenienced and uncomfortable.
no.
Like, I can literally remember when we decided we were done with paid streaming TV.
Mhm.
Done. And I would have thought, well, like going into that, we would have thought, we didn't even watch that much TV. But the few shows that we did watch, well, what are we gonna do now? What are
Yeah.
we gonna do? And we'll miss our favorite episodes and we won't ever be able to watch them because they didn't air on free TV.
Yeah.
I cannot tell you what that wiped out of the budget.
Isn't it
And
funny?
yes, it's a
How
mindset that we think we can't live without something, and then we're like,
we're so
why was I
adaptive.
ever paying for that in the first
Yeah.
place? You know?
Yeah.
So try it. But there's something liberating in being able to say, oh yeah, I quit. I don't waste my money on that anymore because I'm saving for this or I'm doing that or whatever
Mhm.
else. That doesn't mean you're poor. It doesn't mean that you don't
Mhm.
have or you can't. It means you're smart enough not to.
Yeah.
And
At the end of the day, people are, and I almost down the middle are going to be one of two ways. They're always going to find a way, or they're always going to find an excuse. Someone right now just listened to you say that about cutting cable, and they're like, "Well, I got 3 kids, so there ain't no way I could do it without three
that'd be
kids
the
TV."
greatest gift you ever
You
give
know,
them kids is
one of the
get the
great. You're
TV out.
exactly right. And you know what we would do? What I did as a kid? Pull out the box with all those DVDs in it that you hadn't looked at in 5 years, and say, "Here's what you got."
Right.
Right, to work with. If you want to watch TV, pop one of these DVDs in,
Or better
and
yet,
a
go
board game or
go
a
dig in the dirt. Go
yeah.
dig in the dirt.
And the thing, and accept that people are going to look at you differently. People are going to think that because you're planning for your future and they are planning for the next five
Shoveling
minutes from
mud.
now and nothing further. They're planning for nothing further than that. That maybe they will think less of you. Maybe they will look down on you. But like, what difference does that make in the grand scheme?
That's
You
why
know what
it's
I mean?
so important to know what's
Yeah.
in this word because who are
Yeah.
you living for? Are you living
Absolutely.
for their approval or are you living for the King of Kings and Lord of Lords approval when he comes back and says, "What have you done?"
When it comes to all this stuff, it is a blessing and it is blissful how on the same page me and Sarah are. Like us being on the same page with this
Equally
makes
yoked.
makes all the difference in the world because we start looking at things differently. We were talking about this and this study, and one of the things that she mentioned was, a big goal for us is has been to renovate our house. We bought an old house and have been renovating it for the last 5 years. We're getting very, very close. I'm very, very excited. But she said, us thinking in terms of doing that, she said, I started thinking of things in terms of their worth not being a dollar amount, but house stuff. So she was like, I was looking at these clothes that I didn't need, but I really wanted to buy. And I thought, but that same amount of money could buy a couple light fixtures for this room or this hallway or whatever. And so when you have little goals like that, or even little things that you enjoy along the way, something that Sarah and I love to do, that even as we live tight. Like I'll show you my budget. We live for what we make. It's surprising kind of what we live on. We love going out to eat together. And so we love going to the Don Tequila and splitting a Don Tequila special, and it runs us $16 after tip for us to share that. We start looking at
You
little
can't cook that in your
right.
house.
We start looking at little expenditures like, that's a trip out to eat because that's something we enjoy doing that's worth us not buying this thing that we don't need in exchange for something we really enjoy doing. But Sarah and I's grocery budget weekly is $125, and we do it every single week.
I don't even know how you
And
get
we,
away
and
with
we, and
that.
we have food left over. And so it didn't start out that way. You know what I mean?
Yes.
But there's little things that we do differently. And again, we don't eat ramen.
Yeah.
People are like, oh, they must be eating beans and rice. But like we have a system, we have an approach, we eat good meals. Like for this past week, we eat enchiladas and salmon and ribs and all that other stuff each
Yeah.
evening. But we don't buy a bunch of junk and snack food. We drink tap water. We don't buy a ton of junk. We don't buy a ton of drinks. We eat coffee every morning for breakfast. That's a joke. We drink coffee for breakfast and eat what we need for lunch. And it's neat. When you kind of have to find a way, you find a way. There was this illustration, and I've read, as we talked about, a bunch of different books. In one of them, this entire book was fine, but the illustration in the very first chapter was the very best part of the entire book. He was talking about this. I think it was a war general that maybe he was a Roman war general, had his guys on boats. They were coming to take this land in. I guess it would be further Western Europe, kind of what we know of like England and Spain today. They pulled up on the shore and they got out, and they started fighting, and they were outnumbered, they were outmanned, they were fighting uphill. They're coming off of the sea, going upward, fighting. And the greatest military move that he made was he commanded for the boats to be burned. And obviously, those were valuable, those were worth something. Why did you burn them? After they won the battle. The only reason that the story's still around to be told is because they won the battle, and he was asked why. And he said the moment that the option of retreat was no longer there, it was either win or die. And like, I know that's a very drastic example, but we keep in the back of our mind the option of, well, at any time I can go back to living the way I was living.
Yep.
Anytime, I was actually this past week, I was reading The Art of War by Sun Tzu, super famous old book. One of his rules of war, never back the enemy into a corner. Always give the enemy a chance of escape and they'll flee. He
Mhm.
said, you back them into a corner and you'll unleash something in them that you
Yep.
don't want any part of.
Yeah.
And so
That's good advice.
whenever if you're wanting to make a huge life change like this, like the retreat of going back to the boats and sailing home, like you got to burn the boats.
Yeah.
There's got to be I'm gonna do
No way
this.
out.
I'm gonna accomplish this. There's no way out for me to doing this. And whenever we start approaching it that way, you'll surprise yourself at the ways you find, the ends you meet, the way we restructure priorities, and that it can be done. You can have a future, you can own your home. You can get out of this. You can do it, just not the way you're doing things right now. Find mentors, find people you can trust. Do your research on things. Before you make big purchases, doing that investment, doing that research, seeing what's it cost new, what does it cost to use. But you know what's beautiful? You know what's beautiful when you start changing the lifestyle, it stops becoming a temporary and it starts becoming who you are. And so
Builds character.
odds are really good I'm gonna be 65 still driving a piece of junk because what started as this is kind of the means to an end just becomes a, this is really smart
Yeah, yeah.
what I'm
Excellent.
doing. And you also learn that, it doesn't bother me when I pull up at a stoplight and people judge me or think I'm poor or whatever else because I stop caring about what other people think and start focus on what we're doing and why we're doing it.
Yeah.
Um, and it's a very freeing thing.
You have to die to self in this
It's
process.
a wildly freeing thing. Like
Yes.
you ought to try it.
Yeah.
You ought to come step into the madness. It's
Yeah.
fantastic.
We
So,
dare ya.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, thank you again, Cameron, for being on here today and sharing so much good information. And like, I mean, yes,
Absolutely. I love it.
even money is tied to the word of God. And if you want to know what to do with it, pray. Ask God to show you.
Absolutely.
Learn because knowledge is power and it's freedom. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm all about some of that. So
Absolutely.
you
It's been
guys,
good.
yes, thank you again. You guys have a great rest of your day. We'll see you next week.
Oh, did it? Okay, cool.